people buy with emotion and they justify with fact. It's how we buy our cars. We sit in the car and we're driving it. This is great. It feels great. And then you go home and say, honey, can we afford that?
Yeah.
You got to justify it with fact. But the emotional piece is so important. So when families are going through that exercise of, do we do in-home care? What does that look like? What are the options? Assisted living, which assisted living community? We're bombarded with information, and we as marketers are very good at telling people what we do.
Yes.
But the proof is in the pudding. And when someone comes in, it's what is their experience with us? Because word on the street is you're not doing a good job, and that will sink you. So you have to make sure operations are tight and you're demonstrating what that value looks like to a prospect.
Welcome to The Move-In, a senior living marketing podcast from Unlock Health, a full-service marketing partner for the aging services industry. Join us for candid conversations exploring the latest marketing strategies with the senior living community leaders and innovative solution partners who are moving our industry forward. Together, we'll build a community to build better communities. Hello, I'm Larry Williams, and welcome back to The Move in Senior Living Marketing. Today, while at Smash, I chatted with Greg Anderson, the Managing Director of Northbridge Advisory Services. Greg is a good friend of mine and someone I consider to be a mentor as I've navigated the dynamic world of senior living. In this conversation, we discuss the excitement and future of the senior living industry, challenges and strategies in senior living operations, such as aligning business goals with investor expectations, the importance of data, marketing, and demonstrating value to prospects, and the value of external perspectives and personal connections by bringing in talent from outside the industry to provide fresh insights. All right, let's jump into it. All right, we are back on the move in senior living. I got my friend Greg Anderson. Greg is the Managing Director of Northbridge Advisory Services. And Greg and I met at Health Tech. It was last year, it was last August, but man, I feel like we were talking about it a few days ago. I feel like we've known each other for years.
I was introducing you to somebody and I said, we've known each other like four or 5 years. You're like, no, dude, it's a year.
I started doing the math. I'm like, it's crazy, but it's been a year. But man, I just thank you for everything you've taught me over this last year.
Oh, come on.
All about senior living, but even more, thank you for the friendship. And I think it just shows the power of this community, you know, coming together, sharing ideas, and just being there for one another. And events like this, I feel like it definitely like just really brings people together to build on those connections, which ends up, bringing power to this space as a whole.
Yeah. I've always believed that when people are in any job, they want to show up and feel successful.
Yes, I agree.
So what is it as coaches, as advisors, as friends, what can we do to help people feel successful in their job? I was at NIC recently, and I walked out of that conference feeling this sense of there was a buzz, an energy, a positive energy, which is not always the case on the investment side of things, where there are certainly pressures, but there was a sense of collaboration. And you always feel it in the sales and marketing type venues.
Yeah.
We're all chatty, happy people, largely speaking. But when you're looking at it from the investment perspective, there's a lot of stress.
Yes.
Yet these days, there's some collaboration there that I haven't really seen before.
That's
encouraging.
Exciting. Yeah, absolutely. And you see, I feel like it kind of like spirals out from there. In some of the conversations that we've had around here, just a lot of momentum in terms of like what's going on in this space, what we're seeing, what we're excited about, and really what the future of senior living looks like. And so that's what, beyond you being just a great individual who I wanted to connect with on this podcast, I thought it'd be good to, just bring you in and just get your insight into what you're seeing in the space and what the future looks like and really give some advice. And so what have you seen this week at Smash that gives you that extra level of excitement about where this space is going?
I will tell you, everyone here, we're in this place of, we're trying to, put the pieces together. How do we become profitable? How do we, as operators, what are we doing to make our communities better? this is a setting where the ideas are just endless.
Yes, I agree. There's such a blue
Inspiration.
ocean here.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I was sitting in a session and it was on whatever the topic was, but I was finding myself paying attention to how things were positioned, ideas that were presented in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I'm inspired.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're in a place where you are open to being inspired, you got the world at your fingertips.
Yeah.
You can do anything. So
Yeah.
there's energy here that I like.
Absolutely. Now, I know here lately you hear more about active aging, in-home care, in some of the different ways we can position aging services. How do you see that playing out in the future, like in terms of opportunities for those who are looking for options? I mean, do you see these continue to grow and flourish and really meeting people where they are in this journey, like in terms of with some of those specific options?
As it relates to assisted.
Yeah, assisted, like the independent living, but like
Yeah.
I feel like there's just within those, it's opening more doors. And even if you want to have home services,
Yeah.
but you want to connect with the community,
Yeah.
I just feel like there's so many ways to approach aging services these days.
The people are looking for choice. They are looking for amenities. They're looking for value. And I've always said, people buy with emotion and they justify with fact. It's
Yeah.
how we buy our cars. We
Sure.
sit in a car and we're driving it. This is great. It feels great. And then you go home and say, honey, can we afford that?
Yeah.
You got to justify it
Sure.
with fact. But the emotional piece is so important. So when families are going through that exercise of, do we do in-home care? What does that look like?
Yes.
What are the options? Assisted living, which assisted living community? We're bombarded with information, and we as marketers are very good at telling people what we do.
Yes.
But the proof is in the pudding. And when someone comes in, it's what is their experience with us? We were talking yesterday in your fabulous lunch, and we were talking as a group about you can tell people that you are the best assisted living or the best memory care, but really, what does that look like? And how are we conveying that to people? Because, word on the street is you're not doing a good job, and that will sink you. So you have to make sure operations are tight and you're demonstrating what that value looks like to a prospect.
Yeah. They need, it's one thing to tell them, but they have to experience
They
it.
have to experience it.
Yeah.
I always say, to friends, even, prospects, I always say, just show up unannounced to take a look at the community.
Yes.
Show up at 9:00 on a Sunday morning.
Your own mystery shopper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just catch people off guard,
Yes.
because that's where you're going to find really what's going on in a community.
Yeah.
Salespeople hate that, by the way.
But it keeps everybody, and it's not like you're trying to catch them off guard, but you need to have an honest assessment.
Yeah.
And to really understand what's really going on.
And our customers today are very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
They are coming in with a list of questions.
Yeah.
I remember people would say, well, nobody asks about staffing ratios. So, Greg, why do I have to be able to answer that question? Well, guess what? They are coming in now saying, what is your resident to aide ratio? And if we're not prepared to answer that, we can get tripped up. But people are online, they're doing research, AI, all of a sudden it's like, what are the 10 questions I need to ask when I tour an assisted living community?
We have empowered you, the buyer, and that's a good thing.
Yes,
But now there's
absolutely.
competition.
But
that's also a good thing.
Yeah.
We have to step up to that competition.
Yeah.
And on that note, that's one great strategy I appreciate you sharing. What are some other strategies that senior living operators can implement to increase business performance that can appeal to the investor group? Do you have any thoughts on that front?
Yeah, I think there's the operator, being an operator ourselves, we have to make sure that we're managing to expectations on the investor front. Where we see a lot of challenge in the market is the misalignment between what the objectives are as a private equity group or a REIT, what their expectations are of that one property versus what the operator is looking at. And there's often a misalignment. The goals are off. The focus is not where it needs to be. Operators, it's not easy running an assisted living community.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science, but it's not easy. It's high expense.
Yes.
You have to really have your policies and procedures and your systems intact. And large operators really struggle with how do we take this great concept and put it into 70 properties. Investors want the margins. I want to make sure that we are making our money, that when we flip this asset, we're not going to lose our shirt, and that becomes pressure to the operator. We, as advisors, we find ourselves being kind of the child between mommy and daddy divorcing. And then we have to be, interpreting on both ends of things. But being operators ourselves, when we're working with a client that is also an operator, they know we're speaking their speak.
Yeah.
We get it. I've been there. I've been an executive director.
It's a whole different conversation.
It's a whole different conversation.
Speaking at somebody compared to speaking with somebody.
Yeah. But operators really do need to have their ducks in a row and have clarity with what they're doing, so the investor pool, the investment groups really do see how it's all being done.
Well, so we're at a marketing and sales conference this week.
Yeah.
When we think about those private equity groups, and like you said, they're looking for margin.
Yeah.
But from a marketing standpoint, can you give advice to, marketing executives to what private equity groups are looking for on that front?
Yeah. That's a great question. The piece that we see often is are we using data to our best advantage?
Yeah.
Are we using data to inform our decisions? Great ideas are wonderful, but how does that play out?
Yeah.
So when it comes to digital marketing, how are you using your digital dollars?
Yeah.
And what's the return on it? The operators really, they really need to convey a sense of confidence in what they're doing. Conferences like Smash are where you will leave and you will say, oh my gosh, here are 5 or 10 things I can bring back to my company and put into practice. But it's not, I was talking with one operator yesterday and I said, you really got to talk to this group over here. They do a great job at whatever the projects were. And he said, I love that idea. That's fantastic. Thank you for mentioning that. But I don't have the infrastructure back at my office to get it done.
When you want to go forward, but you don't have that foundation that would support it.
We don't have the team. I don't have the talent. I don't have the CEO isn't sold on a new puppy for every move-in. I think it's a great idea, but I can't implement it. That, as an operator and even as an advisor, that's frustrating. Because you talk to someone like Larry Williams and what you guys are doing, and you think, I want to work with you. I want you to bring me some of your services to help my business. But if I go back and no one is wanting to put it in the budget, or they don't understand how to spend digital dollars, or I don't have the infrastructure, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Very frustrating.
And it's tough because we speak so much about data. And I know that's always a common theme, especially Smash in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're speaking with Jamie Van Geisel about is we're around data. We need to use the data, especially when it comes to, private equity groups and investors. But there's so much nuance because we as senior living, like the senior living space, we're connecting humans, and it's such a human experience.
Yeah.
How do you find that balance of having that measurable data, but also showing these human connections that sometimes is hard to keep on a spreadsheet at times?
You're absolutely right. That's where a lot of things fall through the cracks because we all have good intentions, but if I'm not proving it out, it's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And so data is really important, and I think our industry has struggled to figure out how to capture data and use it.
Yeah.
We're getting better. this can almost be an overwhelming experience to look at how many ways in which you can use or pull data, whether it's competitive analysis or digital ROI or whatever it may be. That can be overwhelming, but you have to use your data to make sense
Yeah.
of things, and that's what investors are looking for. Make it make sense to me.
Yeah.
And I've had we work with top private equity groups in the industry, and there's I think we know where the operator wants to take this. I think we get it. I
Yeah.
think it makes sense. But make it make sense from a monetary perspective. Like, give me the fact.
Yes.
What are we actually going to be experiencing, and what is that data metric that's going to get us there?
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
It's because there's so many great stories that are involved, but we
Yeah.
need to, leverage the data to really explain the importance
Yeah.
of the bigger picture.
Yeah, yeah.
Another question for you when we're, thinking about, just really aligning business goals. What mistakes have you seen from senior living communities when they're trying to align those business goals with investors' expectations? Like, would you have any advice for communities on that front?
I think transparency is really important, and I think operators need to find their voice with how to convey what it is they're doing. I do see a lot of trepidation, the pressures from a financial perspective of are we making our margins? Are we making money? That doesn't translate to a sales and marketing person all that easily.
Yeah.
Because they're running fast. They're really trying, and so operators have to be transparent. They have
Sure.
to be very clear about what they're doing. It's when they don't communicate effectively, that's where things fall apart. Basic communication.
Yeah. Like we spoke about before, nothing succeeds like the truth, and just over communicate. When in
Yes.
doubt, over communicate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, my last question for you actually, I got two more questions, but this is the last real professional question I ask you this.
All right.
What advice do you have for senior living operators who are navigating a challenging financial environment, and how can marketing support their efforts? Because like you said, going back to the beginning of this conversation, it's a yes, we'd love to do this. We're struggling to get there. And I didn't know, I know you have a lot of conversations with communities, throughout the year. How do you navigate those conversations of how do you get from here to there when they are struggling with that foundational level?
We are probably even guilty at this as operators ourselves, but when you believe your way is the only way, and our genius thoughts of how to staff a sales office or what that salesperson needs to be asking or not asking, we tend to stay in that space.
Yeah.
I like it when people from outside the industry come in to work here because it's a different set of perspectives. So we often find operators are kind of stuck in their own ways. Either it's ego, we got this, we're fine, we're good, we're strong in that sense, or they're stuck.
Yeah.
And so as advisors, we step in and say, look, here's a best practice that we've seen. It may not work for you, but
Sure.
what do you think?
Yeah. At least open up the question.
Let's try looking at that from a different perspective. We're very fortunate to have amazing operators that we work with. The ones that are most successful in moving the needle on whatever the objective is, occupancy or any of it, are the ones that say, what do you think, Greg?
Yeah.
What do you guys do up in New England that we can do down here in Texas?
Yeah.
And so if you're in that space of being open and thinking differently, you're going to go a lot farther than the ones that say, well, we got this figured out.
Or we've always done it this way. And this worked. Let's lean into it.
Yeah.
So I said I had two questions.
Yeah.
I'm adding one to that list.
Okay, bring
you
it.
said it's great. You find that it's helpful to have people outside the industry
Yeah.
to come in and have their feedback. Have you found that any other specific industries, if they're coming from, whether it's a hospitality, real estate, I'm not sure what that looks like, but have
Yeah.
you seen one specific industry to really help guide more so than others?
Certainly hospitality from a sales and marketing perspective, even from an operations perspective, hotels,
Yeah.
resorts, I see that being almost a natural feeder. The learning curve is a little less than other industries, but I have hired people who have I came out of broadcasting and I got into this
Yeah.
industry. There's people that come from, as long as they're coming from a service-oriented business,
That's a good point.
I think your learning curve isn't that steep. But I look at a resume and I think, oh, all right, yeah, I'm interested in how does that person think? How does that
Sure.
person process problems and,
Yeah.
and solve for those problems? So it almost doesn't matter which industry. I'm open to any.
Yeah.
It's the person.
I love
The
that.
interview process is really important, and I think I was with one operator. They asked me to sit in on a salesperson's interview, and it was over Zoom, which
Yeah.
is already a problem because you're not really getting that true experience. But this company, large national operator, have very specific questions that they ask, and they like to ask.
Very formula,
Yeah.
formula.
And I'm saying, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah.
And I'm, what are you doing on Saturday mornings in your house? You wake up with a to-do list. Like, what does that look
Yeah.
like on your weekends? Those are the questions I ask. And this operator was like, whoa, wait a minute.
This is not the formula.
This is not the formula. But I like to change things up a little
Yeah.
bit. So
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Last question. It's
Yeah.
really more of I want to throw it back at you. You're a friend. You're somebody who provides guidance, a mentor. The floor is yours. What do you want to say about senior living, whether it's this conference, marketing, sales, just whatever you want to say at this point, because I think it's going to be valuable. Yeah, I know I put you on the spot on that. I just
No.
feel like you always have some great, I don't know, in every conversation I have, you have some type of feedback that's just kind of hangs in my heart. And so it's like, I just want this community to have one of those Greg moments.
Oh,
and just
man,
like
you're
where
making me-
you just say like, man, this is how I'm feeling about this. It might not even be senior living related.
I was talking to my wife this morning, and she's also in the industry, and I called her and I just said, I want to speak to someone that I love and loves me.
Yeah.
We don't even really need to have a full conversation. I just want to have that connection. So I'm a big energy guy.
You are.
I feed on it. I make connections.
Yes.
Very meaningful. I'm very sensitive. I
Yes.
can get hurt pretty easy. But the older I get, the more I feel, whether it's in this industry or just life in general, surround yourself with love, surround yourself with gratitude, and man, just smile.
Love this.
Smile.
I knew I was going to put you on the spot, and you did not disappoint, my friend. And
Well,
so
I've
thank
been
you for
drinking
that.
all day, so
There we go.
No, kidding. But you're someone that is a natural at extracting out good in
Oh,
others.
thank you. I
So
appreciate that.
you really we get on the phone and we talk business for about 10 minutes,
Yes,
and then
let's move
we
on
got
from
another
that.
hour.
How's family?
Yeah.
How are your kids? What's
Absolutely,
going on with life? So,
absolutely.
yeah.
So I'm blessed to have you as a friend and as a colleague.
Yeah,
So
same here. Blessed to have
Yeah.
you, and just thank you for what all you do for everyone in this space. You uplift
Wow.
us all. So thank you for
Thank
being a
you.
part of this conversation, Greg.
well, hopefully this helped, and keep up the good work. You're doing good stuff,
I
man.
appreciate that, Greg.
Doing good stuff.
All right, we'll see you around today.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
As you can tell, I enjoy every conversation I get to have with Greg. He is constantly looking to grow and give back in every interaction. Here are a few specific notes that stood out to me while Greg was speaking. First, explore bringing in talent from outside the senior living industry, especially people from service-oriented backgrounds such as hospitality, to bring in new perspectives. Operators should be open to diverse experiences and be willing to try different approaches rather than sticking to the status quo. Second, implement strategies to utilize data and digital marketing better. Greg detailed the importance of using data to inform decision making. Making and demonstrating value to investors, operators should invest in infrastructure and the talent needed to effectively capture, analyze, and apply data to their marketing and business strategies. And finally, it is important to foster a culture of transparency and open communication. To align business goals, operators must be transparent and communicate effectively with investors. Operators should prioritize over-communicating, building trust, and finding their voice to convey their strategies and challenges. Greg, you continue to be a wealth of knowledge. Thank you for sharing with us. Now let's go make some meaningful connections.
Thank you for listening to The Move in Healthcare Growth. Add your voice to the conversation. Email the show at themove@unlockhealthnow.com. Follow us on social media and stay up to date at unlockhealthnow.com. Also, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode.